Hi guys, and welcome to another Brushmaster video. So we're going to do pink skin today. So I've got this four-armed model which I've been assured is from Mortal Kombat, and I've base coated the model in a mix of beige red and with a touch of violet red in it as well, just to give it a little bit of a darker tone. And I'm going to take a bit of a different approach here today. So I've started with a slightly lighter base coat, and over that I'm going to apply a fairly heavy wash of violet red. So this is actually, I've mixed this up with some wash medium, which I make myself, which is a mix of Joe Sonia's Magic Mix, a little bit of retarder, and about 60 to 70% water. And I find this works really well to do washes with, so I'm just layering this over the whole model. And for this video we're just going to paint the chest, the head and the arms. I'm not going to do the legs, but I'm going to go through the steps here to make this quite a nice bright pinky Caucasian skin tone. And when you're adding a wash like this, what I find is that I like to put it on quite heavy. So I like to make sure it really gets into all the cracks and crevices. But it's also important to not let it pool too much. So I tend to go around and apply it heavy, put it on as thickly as I can, and then I look back over the model afterwards and see if there's any pooling areas, and I just sort of wick it up with the brush and spread that pooling out. You'll also notice here that I'm living in a very hot, humid country, and paints and washes dry very quickly. So as you see around the top neck area and around this arm, I tend to try and stop the wash when I'm painting it at either lines or folds or areas that cut off. So the head here, you can see he's got a little necklace runs around his the base of his neck there, and I've stopped the wash just up to the edge of that necklace, so that when I go back to it, there's not going to be like a mark or a coffee stain type area of where I finished the wash. So it's quite important when you're doing a wash like this to always move very quickly and do one small area at a time, so that you can get the whole area covered without leaving drying stains or like coffee marks in certain areas, because they will show through if it dries. So that's an important thing to remember when you're doing washes. But I also find this is a really good approach to do something maybe a little bit quicker. So if you're painting, figures that you want to do quicker, or army painting, this is a very good way to get really nice tone and shadows into a model. But it usually does require painting over a lighter base coat, which I'm doing here. And if you notice with my painting style, I try lots of different things all the time. I vary my approach, which is, it's another good lesson for people really. I don't want everything I paint to be the same. It just gets boring if you're painting everything the same way. So I use these different approaches all the time. It's like another time to paint the same model, I might paint it violet red first and then just build up with the highlights. But this is just another way of painting, a different approach, and getting a good result just the same. So I'm going back to my base mix here, which is the beige red with a touch of violet red in it. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to layer over this skin to bring back that original colour as what I would call a very large highlight. And I'm being careful here to make sure that I leave a lot of this violet, red, purplish tone in the shadows. Now what I do with this is I vary how much I leave depending on my light source. So as you'll see on the top of the head here, the light source for me is from the upper left as we look at the model. So I'm painting smaller and less highlights on the right hand side of the model as we look at it. You'll notice especially the side of the head when I've finished, the left hand side of the head that I'm painting right now will be a lot lighter than the right hand side. So with this method I can really control where the light source is coming from. And I try to be conscious of this when I'm painting every part of the model. So you also see on when I paint the chest area, the left hand side of the chest will be lighter than the right hand side. And for the abs muscles, for instance, the highlight on the left hand side of the abs will be pushed towards the left hand side, and the abs that are more visible on the right hand side, the highlight will be towards the center of those abs, because that's nearer the light source, and the highlights will be on the upper areas of the muscles because they're facing upwards. So that's an important thing to remember when you're painting any object, really, is to always think about where your light source is and where you place your highlights, and also in some extent the direction that you pull the paint. As you see here, when I'm painting the lips and the chin, I pull the paint towards where the light source is going to be most strongest. So I'm pushing the paint towards the light source. The other thing to be aware of when you're painting like this, because of the transparent nature of acrylic paints, it will take several layers to get up to the right opacity and the right brightness and intensity that you want. So you'll see here on this face, I'm going over and over a bit several times. And that's because I put a layer of paint down and I move on. I don't continually add paint to that same wet layer of paint. You will add a layer of paint, smooth it around where you want it to be, add a layer of paint somewhere else, and you'll move around the model that way. But then you revisit the bits you've already painted, because once they dry, then you'll see their true value on the model. With acrylic paints, when you paint them on, they look bright and very light. But when they dry, as you can see here, you see the bit on the side of the head there, how bright it is compared to the parts I've already painted. As it dries, it will darken and soften. So you have to revisit it to add more paint each time to get the intensity and value that you want. You can also use this as a means of highlighting. So I don't do it here, but it is very possible to paint a large highlight on with a light color, and then when it dries it will be darker. Then you can paint that same color again, but in a smaller area, and that area will be brighter than the part you've already painted. So you can also use this as a highlighting method. But here I'm just building up the highlights as intense as I need them, and then I'll build it up with layering with lighter colors, and I'll glaze in the transitions later. So we moved on to the upper arms and the chest area here. And as you can see, I'm keeping the highlights very much to the top of the muscles. So I tend to push the paint where I can. I'm going down here, but I usually try and push the paint towards the highlight. And this upper chest area is the area that's going to get the most light. It's closer to the light source, and a lot of it is pointing upwards. So I'm pushing that paint up to the top of this area. And you'll see on the chest area that I paint in a second that I'll push the paint towards the left hand side here, because as I said, the light source is upper left. So this chest area would be lighter towards the left hand chest muscles rather than the center area. We still keep a lot of the light in the center because it's a sort of domed shape, so it's almost cylindrical, this muscle, but I do push this light towards that left hand side. And when I do the other chest muscle, the other side, you'll notice I push the paint to the center of that muscle, because that area is then closer to the light of that cylindrical type object. So these are the things that make miniatures look more convincing, is when you paint your lights, that they're painted towards the light source, not individually painting each object as if it's got a light directly above it shining right in the middle of it. So this is the final result of the first light or highlight on the model. So I'm adding in what we call the first proper highlight now, guys. And we're going to use beige red with a touch of ice yellow in it. So here I'm aiming just to intensify the lights where I think the light is going to hit the most on the model. And as you can see here, it's going to be areas like the top of the forehead, the top of the eyebrows, the top of the cheekbones, the nose, the top of the part above the mouth, and the chin. So these areas I want to make more prominent and stand out on the model, as the head is really the focal part of most models. And we want this to look nice and bright, and it's also the highest part of the model, so it would logically be the lightest part of the model also. So here I'm mixing up a glaze of my last colour, and here you can see how intense the colour is when I put it on a surface. There's not a lot of colour on there, and I'm going to wick most of the paint off on a paper towel, and I'm going to push this paint from outside the highlight into the highlight that I've painted. And all I'm trying to do here is soften the edges of the transition. With this glazing technique, the key to it really is making sure that that you get the dilution of paint right, and you can work with many different dilutions of paint for glazes. And secondly, that you wick the majority of the paint and the water off of the brush on a paper towel before you start glazing. I always know when it's right, and you'll see the same, is when you add one of these glazes to an area, when you brush over a surface several times, as you start another part of the model, you can see that the previous bit is virtually dry already. It dries so quickly when you get it right. And this enables you to add so many layers to a model in very short and quick succession, because as soon as it's dry, you can go back and add another layer and build up a little bit more color and intensity. So this way of blending is quite a nice, fast and easy approach. So at this stage of the model, I decided that my mid-tone had got a little bit lost. It was a little bit monochromatic to my eyes. So I wanted to add some more color and vibrancy in. So I've mixed up a glaze here, like we did previously, of violet red. This is really thin though. You can probably see it on the palette there when I get some from my brush. This is probably 3 or 4 parts water to 1 part paint. And I'm applying this very light and very subtly. Now, I want this to build up slowly, the color, and not look too bold or sharp at an early stage. I want this to build into those shadow areas and build up that really nice intensity without leaving any brush marks or large dark areas that don't look quite right. I'll also be painting this in all the crevices and all the sharp creases of the model. So you'll see I'll try to paint down the side of his nose, under his chin, across his mouth where the crevice where his mouth is. And I just take my time to build up this color. So the last step of the model here was I wanted to add a little bit of redness to this colour. It was probably a little bit too pinky for my taste. So I've got wine red here, which is a really nice, rich, vibrant, dark red. And I want to add this into the deepest shadow areas and try and add a little bit more contrast and a little bit more redness to certain areas to give this life a little bit more skin. I was really happy with the results of this when it came out, and this wine red, this last layer of wine red really does help those muscles pop out, and it helps to define the shadow areas and the lower areas of those muscles. Here's the final result of the painting today, guys. As you can see, the skin has come out nice and Caucasian looking, but it's got a lot of that pinky and wine red in it, which I think looks really nice, and the whole model painted like this I think would look pretty cool. Thanks for watching, guys, and join me next time for another Brushmaster video.